Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into something pretty fundamental, the hidden cost of commitment. This idea that, well, any really big purpose, any true mandate, kind of pushes back against chasing personal success and status. We're kicking things off by looking at contrast. Situations that start out great, really leisurely, seems like smooth sailing, but then suddenly things flip. And you find yourself scrambling, maybe even feeling like you're hurried and crawling just to keep up.
Yeah, and our source uses this specific Taiwanese political anecdote, actually a song called Didn't Attend, to capture that feeling, that sense of helplessness when life throws you a curveball, when the easy start turns into a real struggle.
Exactly, and that gap, that tension between what you expect maybe ease and the actual reality, which is often struggle, that's really the heart of what we're exploring today.
Right. Our deep dive is based on sources looking at what genuine commitment means, especially in a faith context. We're contrasting that idea of selfless duty with, well, the very human pull towards comfort, status, and what the world calls success.
And interestingly, before we even get to the mandate itself, the source gives us these real-life examples who sort of embody the opposite of that worldly success idea.
Ah, you mean the elders from the early North Pew Church?
Yeah, Yao Zicheng, Zhang Yuank, Pan Yuhua, all in their mid-90s, like 95, 96 years old.
And what's striking about them, according to the source, isn't what they had in worldly terms.
Exactly. It's what they lacked. No fancy degrees, no big corporate jobs, no major social standing.
Their whole focus, apparently, was just on being good Christians. Yao and Zhang, first-generation believers. They really showed that a life's value, its legacy, it comes from sticking to your duty, not collecting titles or status symbols.
A legacy purely about service, not self. Okay, so let's define this duty, this mandate they were living at. It comes from Matthew 28, right? Verses 18 to 20, usually called the Great Commission.
That's the one. The core command is to make disciples of all nations. Pretty straightforward on the surface.
But there are layers to it.
Definitely. Two key parts. First, baptism in the name of the Trinity.
Yeah.
Okay. But the second part is maybe even more critical, teaching them to obey everything Christ commanded.
So it's not just about getting people to believe something. It's about teaching a whole way of life rooted in obedience.
Exactly. It's a complete transformation. But hang on. This command was given, what, 2,000 years ago? To just 11 guys? How does that apply to everyone else, to us today? How is it compulsory?
Well, that's where the source uses that brilliant phrase. You were not necessarily present at the scene, yet you must personally carry out the task.
Okay, break that down.
Think about it. When Jesus said this, Judas was gone. Only 11 disciples heard it directly. Paul wasn't there.
None of us were there.
Right. Almost no Christians throughout history were physically present, so the mandate has to transcend that specific time and place.
So the duty applies even if you didn't attend the original meeting, so to speak?
Yeah.
It's baked in, universal, compulsory. It's the work. Precisely. And to really feel the weight of that compulsory nature, we have to look at maybe the most unlikely person involved in the early church. Or rather, originally one of its biggest enemies.
You mean Saul? Saul of Tarsus.
Yeah, the man who became the Apostle Paul. His story starts much earlier, though, in Acts, with Stephen.
Right, Stephen, one of the first deacons, chosen to help care for widows, practical stuff.
But he was more than just an administrator. The text says he was full of faith, the Holy Spirit, preached powerfully, even performed miracles.
He seemed like a rising star, in a way.
He did. But his success, his boldness, it threatened the religious leaders. He gave this incredible defense of his faith, but it just enraged them.
And they dragged him out of the city and stoned him. A brutal end.
And who was right there, watching, even approving?
Saul. The source says he was personally present at the scene, holding the cloaks for the guys throwing the stones.
Yeah, and it even says he felt joy over Stephen's death. Think about that. Deep antagonism. Hatred, really.
It's chilling. But you're saying that experience was somehow formative.
In a profound way. Paul later understood exactly what persecution felt like, the suffering involved, and he knew intimately the darkness in the heart of the persecutor, because he'd been both.
That's quite a foundation. So how do you go from that level of hatred to feeling like you have this compulsory duty, this no-choice thing.
It seems to stem from this overwhelming conviction that his life wasn't his anymore. He wrote later in 1 Corinthians that preaching the gospel wasn't just a job, it was a responsibility, almost like a debt he owed everyone.
He actually said, "Woe is me if I do not preach," didn't he?
He did. It wasn't about earning brownie points or getting a reward, whether he felt like preaching or not, whether it was easy or hard. It was a duty entrusted to him. He felt he had no choice because of the grace he'd received.
Okay, so that sense of inescapable duty brings us to Corinth.
Right, Corinth, wealthy city, major port, lots of commerce. And the church there, well, it kind of absorbed the city's value.
Factions, divisions,
Yeah.
people comparing each other based on status, money, influence.
Exactly that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Paul comes in and does something pretty radical.
What's that?
He refuses to take money for his preaching. He deliberately preaches the gospel without charge.
Why? Was he just independently wealthy?
Not really. It was a statement. He wanted to make it crystal clear that his authority, the gospel's power, didn't come from financial backing or social standing. It came from God.
He was intentionally undermining their status games.
Totally. Because if the message depends on the messenger having high status, it immediately limits who can receive it, right? It excludes people.
But hold on, doesn't ministry need some resources? How did things actually function back then if everyone refused support?
Oh, it's not that support itself is wrong. Paul accepted help at other times, but in Corinth specifically, he saw that relying on money and status was corrupting the message itself. It was becoming about the messenger, not the message.
Like judging people based on their airplane seat.
That's the analogy the source uses. First class, business, economy. We do it all the time. Paul was saying those distinctions have no place in the church, especially when it comes to the core mission.
Because the mandate is for all nations, not just the wealthy or influential ones. Making it conditional on status or income just guts the whole thing.
Exactly, and this hits right at the core of what the sources critique as success theology or prosperity theology.
Where God's blessing is measured by your bank account or your title.
Pretty much. The material points to examples like Saddleback Church's historical model, referring to successful members as old horses, people with high knowledge, high income, high status. It creates this environment where faith looks conditional. Paul warned against that very thing.
And when that focus shifts from selfless duty to worldly success, things can go badly wrong.
Dangerously wrong. That's the warning about alternative gospels. Another Jesus, another spirit, another message entirely.
The source mentions a specific stark example.
Yeah, Pastor Kong Hee and Sun Ho from City Harvest Church in Singapore, misusing millions of dollars of church funds for personal gain, chasing fame.
And they ended up in prison.
Right, a direct, measurable consequence of choosing status and financial success over the actual mandate. It's a cautionary tale.
So the error, the core problem, is this subtle substitution.
That's what the analysis suggests, replacing the actual demanding gospel with this easier message of service to you.
Okay, what does that look like in practice? How does the mission get twisted?
Well, it sort of bypasses the hard stuff. Instead of focusing on sin, repentance, the cost of the cross, the message becomes, believe in Jesus, come to church, it props us, get nice things.
Like immediate gratification, blessings, healing, happiness, peace, all the good stuff, none of the sacrifice.
Exactly. It removes the centrality of Christ's sacrifice and focuses entirely on what the believer gets out of it right now. The cross, suffering, sin. Those become inconvenient details. Edit it out.
And what does that do to people? What's the result of that kind of message?
It creates an instant identity crisis, in a way. You're told you're immediately a prince or a princess, destined for enjoyment and abundance. So why bother with messy things like confronting sin or acknowledging suffering or thinking about the cross?
It makes faith easy, but maybe shallow. It empties out the mandate.
While Paul, on the other hand, stuck to his guns. Even though the Corinthians saw him as maybe unimpressive, lacking authority because he didn't demand the fancy lifestyle.
He kept preaching the cross, the offensive part.
Right. Through persecution, betrayal, shame, he stayed faithful to the hard message, not the popular one. His life showed that the call involves hardship and humility, not collecting accolades.
So if that's the standard, humility, hardship, selflessness, who actually lives up to it, the sources give us some models.
Right.
Starting way back with George Leslie Mackay.
Mackay in Taiwan. Yeah, the Canadian missionary. Spent 30 years there, northern Taiwan mostly. Died relatively young, 57, buried in Danshui.
And his ministry wasn't exactly comfortable.
Not at all. Constant travel, rough conditions, dealing with hostile groups sometimes, the sheer physical grind of it.
We hear stories about him pulling teeth.
Yeah. Apparently that was part of the toolkit. Bible, maybe a boat, and pliers. It completely redefines ministry away from, comfortable committee rooms.
And crucially, he wasn't promising people an easy life or riches if they followed Christ.
No, quite the opposite. His followers knew they were signing up for hardship, following him up mountains, across rough terrain. That was just part of accepting the mandate.
That really is the core of discipleship, isn't it? Following whatever the personal cost. Okay, so let's fast forward. The material also talks about a modern example, a ministry trying to live out that freely received, freely give principle from Matthew 10:8.
Right, a conscious rejection of relying on money, power, status, fame, all the usual metrics.
How do they do that practically? The source mentioned 3 specific no's.
Yeah, it's quite countercultural. First, no advertising. They refuse to monetize their content with ads, even with significant reach. The message stays completely separate from commercial interests.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the other 2? They involve the audience more directly.
They do. Second, no membership or fees. All the teaching, the content is just free. No paywalls, no subscriptions. Access isn't based on ability to pay.
And the third one is maybe the most surprising.
It often is. No solicitations or donations. They deliberately don't ask their audience for money. They express confidence in their existing provision and keep the focus entirely on the message, not on fundraising.
Wow. So that's a very intentional pushing back against the status-driven, result-oriented model we see elsewhere.
Absolutely. It's a modern demonstration that you can prioritize the integrity of the message over chasing metrics or financial gain, the very things that led to ruin for, say, the city harvest leaders. There's a kind of freedom in that self-reliance, keeping the work purely about the mandate.
That consistency, that commitment to not playing the status game, it really underscores what true commitment might look like today.
Yeah, it shows that commitment isn't measured by income or influence, but maybe by what you're willing to give up to stay true to the call.
So looking across everything, the long faithfulness of those elders, Paul's radical sense of duty born from his past, Mackay's sheer grit, this modern ministry's financial independence, there's this powerful, unavoidable tension, isn't there? The real call, the true mandate, it seems to demand humility, it expects hardship, and it requires rejecting this temptation to make the gospel about our own comfort, our success, our status.
And that rejection, that's the cost. That defines whether you're committed to the real thing. The source uses this image of a little bamboo light. The church's work, its effort, it's meant to light the way, provide warmth for others.
But not for showing off.
Exactly. The moment you start waving it around for your own glory, for recognition, for performance achievements, as the material puts it, you've lost the plot. You've betrayed the mission.
Which leaves us with a pretty pointed question, maybe for you listening.
Yeah. What really is the difference between just doing good work that genuinely helps people, and advertising that work, promoting it for self-validation, for hitting targets, for building your own brand, getting that distinction right? Well, that seems to be the true ongoing cost of the commission.